So let's talk about the grading for this class now. So I use what's called standards-based grading, and it really has kind of two basic principles to it. One is that when I give you a grade for a set of problems, it shouldn't just be a number, like you earned 9 out of 13 points. It should give you some indication of what you did right and what you did wrong. And secondly, the other part of standards-based grading is that you should be able to increase your level of achievement as you go. So if at first you don't necessarily get the level of achievement you want, you should be able to bring that up later. So I'm going to share my screen again, go to our site, and kind of explain how all this works. So I'm going to start by clicking on this document called rubrics. So when I use the term standards, I think I might have mentioned this in the last video, I just mean topics. Okay, so in this class, you're going to have 27 different standards or 27 different topics that I feel like I need to evaluate you on to see how well you understand. And so when I give you a set of problems that addresses one of those standards or one of those topics, I'm going to take all of those problems that you do into account, and then I'm going to assign you one of these 5 levels. So either not yet, novice, developing, proficient, and expert. And this is just kind of a general description here of what each one means. Not yet means like you left the page blank or you did something completely different than what you needed to be doing. Novice means you basically start to get some right ideas down, but not enough to really get the ball rolling on the problem. Developing means you definitely got a lot of right ideas, but maybe you make some big mistakes that make it so you can't get to the right answer. And you can't really maybe make too much progress on any kind of more complex problems. Proficient means, you're able to do the bread and butter problems of that particular standard or topic pretty darn well, but maybe you struggle with some of the most challenging questions. And then expert means you're at the very top there. You can do any question I throw your way at a particular topic. So you're going to receive one of these 5 levels. Now, just for shorthand, I am going to use numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, but understand this is not an attempt to like assign points to it. It's just easier than writing out expert or, all those words. Now, this is kind of just a general idea of what it means, but what's more helpful to you is that for every topic, I specifically lay out what the criteria are for getting each level. So you should be able to look at this and know exactly what you're shooting for in terms of your studying. All right, and so there's one for every single standard or every single topic in the class. Okay, so that's this document. I really suggest that you use that document ahead of time, not just after the fact to see, hey, why did I get a 2 here? Why did I get a 3 here? But use it ahead of time so that you can you can have something to aim for, essentially. All right, and then so that's how I'm going to be grading you, okay? And those grades are going to be assigned pretty much exclusively on tests, okay? So I already in another video went through the assignments, and the assignments are there to prepare you for tests. And a very small part of your grade is determined by homework assignments, so it can hurt you not to do them, but for the most part I want you to use these to get ready for tests. And so when it comes time to take a test, you'll open this up, you'll open up assessments. Now this looks a little funny. This top one shouldn't be here, but I pulled it up so that you have an example of what to look at. But here's what you'll see. 1 through 6, that's the first set of standards you'll assess on, then 7 through 12, 13 through 17, and so on. So let me just click on this one so you can see what it looks like. This is not for our class. This is actually for a different class. So let me click on this so you can see where an assessment appears, how that appears. So first of all, what I do is I look at, I read through all these instructions, And then I notice there's a password, 12345. And so when I go to click on this, it's going to ask me for that password. So I type it in and I start the test. All right. So notice there's a time limit up here. So that'll kind of tick down as I go. And I've got assignment, you know, just like in a WAMAP assignment, there's places to put your answer. But here's what I want you to understand. The primary thing that I'm grading when I grade your assessments is the work you write down. So when you're doing this, I want you to pretend like it's a written test in person. So you're going to write it all out, label everything carefully, and then I will have you put your answers in these blanks, but that's not really what I'm grading. I'm grading your work on paper. So that's what's really important. But this I need you to put in basically because I need to make sure that you're not just like taking pictures of these problems and then leaving the assignment and then, you know, taking 4 hours to do it, right? So I do need the answers to actually be put in real time. And so you go through, do all the problems on paper, put in the answers as you go, and then when you're done, you hit submit. Okay, your assessment's been submitted. And then right after that, immediately after, this is important. So whenever you finish this, immediately after, you need to go to work taking pictures of all that work you wrote down. So the easiest way to do that is just to take pictures of each individual page of your assessment and then click on this, attach standards 1 through 5 assessment work. Good, hit start. And so there's a place for each page. So what you'll do is, you know, on your phone, the WAMAP works really well with phones. So you can just take all the pictures on your phone if you'd like, then go to WAMAP and open up this assignment in WAMAP, and then, you know, just click choose file, and then from your phone, pick whatever, you know, whatever it is you want to pick, you know, so the test taking agreement, you know, whatever. But you pick those picture files and then they just put them in there, and you can do that for each page. And then when you're all finished, hit submit and end. And what that does is it puts those files on WAMAP, and then I'm able to go in and retrieve them and then grade them using my software program. So that's the procedure for tests. So when you take this test, you're going to get 5 different scores, 1 for each standard, for standard 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you'll be ranked as, you know, expert, proficient, developing, whatever. Okay, so you do that. Then let's say you're not happy with 1 of your scores or 2 of your scores. You want to bring them up. Well, you can do that. So down here, there are reassessments. And there will be a particular day, and usually it's about a week after your initial assessment, there'll be a particular day where these reassessments will be open. And on that day, you can open this up and you'll see standard 1 reassessment, okay? And at first, you won't be able to click on it, okay? In order to access a reassessment, you have to complete some extra book work that helps prepare you for the reassessment, and then you attach it right here, okay? So, oh, excuse me. And so, just to give you an idea of how this works, if I go in there and I just attach my book work that I've taken pictures of, and I'm going to, you know, put as many pages as I need to, then I hit submit. Then after I attach that, you'll notice now I can click on the reassessment. And this reassessment just has a password of 1, so I'll just put that in. And this one, really short little problem here, okay? And then you put those in and put in your answers, and just like on their first assessment, you write it all down and take a picture of that and attach it right here, right underneath. So here's where you're attaching your book work. Think of that as like your ticket to getting into the reassessment. You're showing me that, hey, I've done some extra practice, and so you should let me take this reassessment now. And then that opens up, you can take the assessment, and then you attach the work for that reassessment here. And you can do that for as many or as few of these as you want. If you're happy with all your grades, then you don't need to do any. If you want to reassess on all of them, you can. It's just you have to do the book work for all of them. Okay, so how do you know what book work to do? That's up here under assigned problems for reassessments. So if you decided I need to reassess on standards 1 and 2, then you would click on that, and you would go in your book and do these odd problems on notebook paper. And sometimes, like in the standard 2 here, there are some odd problems, but then there's also some extra problems that I put in there. And that usually happens if I don't think that the book gave you quite enough practice. So when you do all of these, you got them on your notebook paper, but then you also should be checking your work. So odd problems are always in the back of the book. So check the answers for everything. Make sure you're doing it right. And for these extra questions that I give you, at the very bottom of this, you'll find the answers. So here they are for those questions from standard 2. So no matter what, you should always be able to check the work that I'm asking you to redo in order to qualify to take a reassessment. And so bottom line here is that if you don't like how a particular test went, you can do something about it. And of course, the fact that you didn't do as well in the first one as you wanted means you do need extra practice. And so that's what the book work's intended to do, is give you extra practice. And as soon as you do that, then you can take that reassessment. But like I said, it's only open on a specific day. So for example, our first test, let me close this up. So standards 1 through 6 assessment, that is going to be, see, on Friday, October 2nd. The reassessments are going to be available Monday, October 12th. So there's a very specific day they're available, but they're open all day. And so you just need to have that book work ready to go. You can attach it, and then you'll be able to take the assessments. So the bottom line is, what I really want to do here is make this a little bit more like real life. I mean, what happens when you go and take your driver's test and it goes badly and you don't pass, right? Well, it's not like you never get to drive again, right? You go and study more, and then you retake the test. And so I'm trying to instill that principle into this class as well. So, so obviously you're going to take the initial test really seriously. You can save yourself a lot of work by making sure that you're really ready to go and do well on that. But know that you absolutely can bring your grade up afterward if that first assessment doesn't go the way you'd like. So basically, I want you to count on two cracks at any one standard, right? So you have your initial assessment and then your reassessment. At the very end of the class, in the last week of class, I will give you an opportunity to pick 6 standards from throughout the rest of the class that you want to take a third attempt on. Okay, so you just, so you can't do it for every one of them, but you will get a third attempt on a select few of your choosing. And so that's going to be the last week of class. So you can know that that's there, but probably the best approach is, in your mind, just think, I've got 2 shots at the most. And then at the end, if you have a couple that you want to try a third time, you'll be able to do that. And then lastly, there will be a final exam, and I'll grade it the same way. Some topics, some standards will appear on the final, some won't. If they don't, then you just get whatever score you already had. If they do, then your new score on the final replaces your old score if you do better. If you do worse on the final, then what I do is I average your old score with your final, and they average together to make your last score. And I'll show you how that works when I take a look at the grade book here. All right, so, and I will also post all your past assessments in here, so you'll have keys and things like that you can look at. So let's go take a look at the grade book and see what that looks like. All right, so here's what the grade book looks like. So you're going to have your homework here that you can look at, but then here's the way the grades get recorded for each assessment. So for standard 1, so this little number here indicates which assessment it was. Was it the first, the second, or in some cases the third? This is where I'd put a score for the final exam. And then down here is where I put where you stand at this moment. So in this scenario, for standard 1, the student got expert on their very first try. So there was no reason for them to do the second or third assessment attempt. It was not asked on the final. And so the student has a 4 or expert, just like they got, that from that very first assessment. So then in this one, the student got a 3, which is proficient on their second standard for the first attempt. They decided they wanted to bring that up. They did the book work, took the reassessment about a week later, and brought it up to a 4. And then it was not asked on the final, so they have a 4. Standard number 3, they got a 1, so didn't do so well. So that's novice. But they studied hard, did the book work, and brought it up to a 4 on their second attempt. Notice it's a complete replacement, by the way. So when you do better, it just replaces your old score. Because at that point, I say you have it now. So just because you didn't get it the first time, I'm not going to penalize you as long as you get it up to the level you need to. Then it was asked again on the final, but you still got a 4, and so there's a 4 overall. All right, so how about this one? You got a 2 at first, a 4 on the second one. So they had a 4 going into the final, but guess what? I asked it on the final. This student didn't study hard enough for the final for that particular topic, so they got a 2. And so that, when I say that I average them, those would average out to a 3, right? So they average out to a proficient. Here's another example of averaging. The student had a 4 going into the final, got a 3 on the final, so that averages to a 3.5. Okay, so what in the world does that mean? That means basically I give you half of a proficient and half of an expert when I'm tallying up how many you have at the end. Here's a case where the student they did not do well on the first one, but on the second one, they brought it up to proficient. And then they decided they wanted to try to bring it up even more during that third attempt the last week of class, and they brought it up to a 4. I didn't ask about it on the final, so now they have a 4. And then lastly, here is one where the student kind of struggles with one all quarter, but they really study hard for it on the final and they get it. They get it up to a 4 on the final, so guess what? They have a 4. It doesn't matter that they spent most of the quarter struggling with it. They eventually got it, so they have a 4. All right, so when you are looking at your own grade book, you can get to the bottom line of things by going down here. These numbers, don't pay attention to the percentages at all. In this class, percentages are meaningless, so don't worry about them. So you shouldn't worry if you see this, 67.3%, it's meaningless. The total doesn't matter. What you do in order to determine your grade is you count up how many of each you have. So how many experts did you have? How many proficients did you have? How many developing did you have? And so on. And so as I go through, and I can show you how I count this. So I'm going to count up my 4s first. So 1, 2, 3. And then remember, this is half of a 4. So 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, 10.5, 11.5, 12.5, 13.5, 14.5, 15.5, 16.5, 17.5. So I have 17.5 4s. Okay, so I'm writing this down on a piece of paper. I can count up my threes. 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, and here's one that's half a 2 and half a 3. So that's going to be 6, 7, 8, 9. So I write down 9 threes. And I look for twos, 1, 2, and then a half a 2. So that's just 1.5 twos. And I have no ones and no zeros. Okay. So, I don't know, probably can't really see this. I don't even bother, but I wrote down each one. Okay. That's the point. I want you to notice down here, there's one labeled homework. There's a 28th one labeled homework. So basically, one of the standards is how well you complete homework. So yes, homework's required, and if you don't do a significant portion of it, you'll get lower scores. So I think it's like 90 to 100% on your homework, you get a 4. 80 to 90, you get a 3, and so on. So do your homework, and then you get basically a freebie down here. All right, so how does this factor into a grade? So I'm going to open up the syllabus here. All right, so here is my master table for how I decide what grade you get. So remember that we have 1.5 developing, 9 proficient, and 17.5 expert. So I start on the right here, okay? If I had any zeros at all, any not yets, then the only grades I can receive are these ones down here, okay? All right, but I don't have any of those, and I didn't have any ones, right? So the first place I need to look is here. So I cannot get an A. The reason I can't get an A is because in order to get a solid A, I cannot have any developing. I can't have any 2s, and I have some. All right, so A is out. But I do have less than or equal to 2 developing, right? I have 1.5. So A minus is still eligible to me. So now I go over here. Do I have at least 26 expert and proficient? The answer is yes. 17.5 plus 9, that's going to give me over 26. So I'm good there. But now I move over to expert. Do I have at least 18 expert? The answer is no. I have 17.5. So I fall just short of an A minus. So that puts me at a B plus. Okay. So that's how grades are figured. Okay. Now I understand this table is not the easiest thing in the world to use. And I got to say, I've been doing pre-calculus using this grading system for quite a while now. And overall, students love this type of class. The one negative feedback I would often get is I didn't know where my grade stood throughout the quarter, right? That was kind of the one negative piece of feedback. So I've tried to address that with a little grade calculator here. So the idea with the grade calculator is that regardless of how many standards you've completed up to that point, you can just put in whatever you've got, and it will kind of project out and say, hey, if you continue at this pace, this is the grade you're headed for. So like if I said, okay, let's say it's after my very first assessment where I only am going to do 6. And so I'm just going to fill in what my scores were for those first 6. Okay, so let's say that's what it is. And I haven't assessed on any of the other standards yet. I would just leave them all blank. I would hit submit. And then I'm going to scroll down here and it's going to tell me how many of each I'm on pace to get. So at your current pace, you are projected to have 14 experts, 9 proficients, and 5 developing. And it says then you are currently on pace to receive a grade of B. So that's what that table would spit out at us as a B. So this is a nice way just to, as you're going, keep track. Obviously, you got to take it with a huge grain of salt because you haven't actually done these. It's assuming that you're going to continue to perform at exactly the same, in exactly the same way you did on the first 6, right? So take it with a big grain of salt, but at the same time, you'll be able to kind of have a good sense for where you stand at any given time. And if you ever have questions about this, you like say, oh, this doesn't sound right, you can just let me know and I'll be happy to walk through it with you. All right, so that is how grading works. It's a little strange, I know, but like I said, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about it, and students, I think, like it, and they report that they actually learn the material a lot better because of going back whenever they didn't perform quite the way they wanted. They had the opportunity to go back and they say, hey, I've learned the material much better than I would have if it was done in a traditional testing manner. So you very well may have some questions about this grading scheme. But remember, we're going to try to meet in this first week, right? Briefly on Zoom. And so any kind of questions about for clarification that you have on how this is all going to work, you can ask me and we'll get those answered for you. All right. I'm looking forward to speaking with you all soon, and we'll talk to you later.